G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 10th of March 2026. Did I get the date right? I got the date right. I think I got the date right. Moving on. Alright, so I'm your host, the author David Applegate, and as the war continues, the war of words continues, the propaganda continues, and I continue to sift through it. And, of course, you'll know, if I was kissing Zelensky's ass, I would get thousands of views. Now, is that because thousands of people are kissing Zelensky's ass? I don't think so. I think also one reason why some channels get lots of views, particularly in Canada, is they are from the Ukrainian community, broadcasting to the Ukrainian community. There is a wide range of reasons. So, little Glenn Finnick out there, you know who you are. You called me a loser. You said that I appeal to a niche audience. And then I found out you only have 1,000 viewers. Sorry, subscribers. And your last video got 23 views. Anybody who calls me out, I am going to call you out. Although I'm not going to dox you. That's illegal. So, I'm not going to tell the rest of my audience who you are, but you watched my videos, obviously, you know that, and I know that, but you decided to be a little man about it in your wee Scottish channel on the Highlands, and normally I would support your channel, but because you decided to be a dick about it because you had to hate on me, I'm going to unsubscribe from you, and that is that. And I blocked you from my channel on YouTube. But I can't block you from anywhere else, I know. Isn't it amazing? I mean, you think about it. People hate over this war. Now, I don't know exactly what triggered him, but all of a sudden, someone decided that I'm a niche channel appealing to a niche audience, and I think it's actually was my MGTOW video yesterday. It must have sent him over the edge. But folks, the world is changing. Gen Z does not want the feminist lifestyle. The feminist lifestyle was imposed on them. Mass migration was imposed on them. Most of them feel the Ukraine war was imposed on them. Most of them were in school when it broke out, and there's no connection there. But to be told, that the Ukraine war started in 2022 is a joke to most people. Most people know the truth. Now, the problem is the establishment, once they create a lie of the Russian invasion, they will stick to it. They will go to their graves screaming, Russian aggression. And it's any wonder Gen Z does not like the older generations. Now, I'm on your side, Gen Z. We hate the boomers too. Not all boomers are communists, not all boomers are pathetic liars. I mean, yes, the boomer generation did give us feminism, it did give us mass migration, it gave us a drug epidemic, it's given everything. But don't forget, those situations did compound with each generation. A lot of things got worse with each generation. So, yes, I can understand why a lot of Gen Zs do not like us older generation. But you have your own problems too, particularly millennials. And they don't like my channel because I'm old, they call me a boomer, and they say, okay, boomer, even though they know nothing and have not seen anything, and they only believe what's in their bubble, because if it isn't on CBS, it didn't happen. Well, why was Catherine Heritage fired from CBS? Because she told the truth. That behind the scenes that there are a team of editors who have been there for decades deciding what's news and what's not. And when she said those they do it with such a political bent. Over the years, it has gotten worse. And if she says, I wonder what it's like if CBS didn't lie about the Vietnam War. That got her fired, right? Imagine. We know now they lied about the Vietnam War, so how am I supposed to tell the audience, right, and not upset Mr. Glenn Finnick, that they're lying about Ukraine? Ukraine is often not as intense as made out to be. Russia does not have anywhere near the resources, and thus I am showing you something the establishment doesn't want. The establishment does not want you to know Russia is not a threat. Except for one little tiny threat. A wee little threat. A threat so small you cannot see it. But when those two threats clash, they can devastate up to 700. Was it 700? It's a massive bomb. Of course, I'm talking about the Tesla bomber. That, was it 70 miles or something? 700 square miles of pure devastation. I think it's the only is it a lithium tritium bomb? It's the only bomb of its kind. There are 3 of them, allegedly. And they can literally just rock up. Now, they're hard to deliver, but if they rock up, there goes your city. And I don't mean, we just lost the centre of town, big fallout, millions dead. I mean, what city? There's no evidence. Warsaw and the surrounding areas, the entire state is gone. Oopsie. No, that is what makes them panic. And I get it. Strategic defense planning is not about Putin or Trump or Zelensky. It's about what happens if we get another Napoleon, another Adolf, another Stalin, another Genghis Khan. Worse, what if we get another Mo? What if we have suddenly a ham crusade? You'll lose your head crusade. And that is why the liberal establishment wants to spread liberalism globally. It all goes back to the Roman Empire and Pax Roma. And, of course, people don't like me talking about that. And, of course, the problem is that the majority out there don't know what I'm talking about because you were undereducated. You were taught the boringest of histories and droning on about wars without any context. The religious wars, yes, Europe was mired in religious wars. But Europe wasn't the most violent history. No, not even. Well, World War I and World War II, of course, is violent and devastating and in our lifetime. But the Chinese Civil War killed more people than World War I. The Great Mongolian War killed more people than World War II. China has a history of 1,600 plus years of violence since the first unification, the first emperor, all the way through to the imagined China and the end of Chinese civilization, as many see it, in 1948 with the Chinese Revolution. Now, the Chinese Revolution did continue for years and killed more people than World War I. So, no, Europe does not have the most violent history, nor the most deaths. Now, China has genocides. Islam has genocides. Heck, the history of Judaism has multiple genocides. Now, of course, most of the history of Africa is unrecorded. Nobody goes to school in Africa and says, "Well, last week the Houthis just killed a whole bunch." No, they don't teach their history. Every war goes away. They don't even teach modern history. Every war goes away, other than their liberation and the fact that Africa was colonized. There's no wars. Why? Because they don't record them. They go disappear. No, you ask people about African wars, Mongolia and Angola and all those. Not Mongolia, Angola and all those. The Ethiopian War, the Sudan. Other than current recent wars, they don't know. They literally wipe it from their mind. They literally do not pay attention and actively work against recalling any war. You watch them. You pick them on a war and you watch their facial reactions. You know they're actively resisting the truth. Africans have such a racist disconnect when it comes to war. They love, which is weird, they love the Angolan wars when or Uganda. They love them. They love them. But those tribal wars were enormous butchery. They didn't fight them with guns. They fought them with machetes. So, yeah, Ukraine ain't that violent. It's not here. I'm also, Mr. Glenfiddich, I'm not here to entertain incels. I'm here to inform gentlemen of distinction about the facts of life. And the fact is, the world is ruled by a collection of 500 psychopaths, the majority of whom are female, and they are the mega billionaires, and they rule the world through financial strings, through the trillion-dollar funds, and below them is the UN, another collection of sociopaths, well-to-dos, and whore chasers. And they infest New York with their above-the-law diplomatic immunity, and they conspire every day to erode the sovereignty of nations. And they do so with their all-encompassing weapon that genocided North Africa, devastated the Middle East, slaughtered countless millions from southern China through to Turkey, and that is, of course, I'm talking about mass migration. Don't forget the Mongols were mass migrating. There were millions of horsemen in a time that probably accounted for a quarter of the world's population. That was massive. A massive army, a quarter of the world's population. Mongols invented camp followers. Did you know that? Women. That's where the whole concept of camp followers come from. As the Mongols moved from camp to camp, they had the women follow. And women from the conquered tribes with nothing else to do would follow them. And hope for the cast-offs, and they would pick through the ruins of the towns that the Mongols raided. So don't tell me what noble women are, the nobility of women. No, when push comes to shove, they are prostitutes and scavengers, just like the rest of us. There is no nobility in war. There is no nobility in humanity when you strip away civilization. When push comes to shove, you see the sycophants come out, like the Greens. The Greens want to kiss Ayatollah Khomeini's ass and say, oh, he's fighting a war of liberation against the imperialist. But it is not the United States who's the imperialist. It's the United Nations. But Iran and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Turkey are the Syria, are the breeding grounds, the tools, as well as Africa and India, of the New World Order to produce and have us. They enslaved us after World War II and had us massively overproduce food in the newly liberated towns. But large, after World War II, large swaths of Europe were turned into massive farming conglomerates. German POWs for 10 years mass-produced massive amounts of food, allegedly to feed their victims, but no, it went to India and China, and you had the miracle rice, and then eventually these farming communities died off because they couldn't justify after 20 years keeping millions locked up. But of course it was a complete genocide and cut the population of Germany from 80 million to 42 million, and now is declining because they literally kept women single and fatherless. Children did not form family bonds. It's only most kids in the last 50 years are single mothers, often with their mother's surname. Can you imagine? Like, I went in 2006 when I was in Vietnam. They had literally the GI orphanage. It was called the GI orphanage. It was massive school with thousands of kids to women who slept with American soldiers and foreign tourists. Yeah, now they're not orphans. They're obviously children abandoned by their families. But increasingly, it was getting smaller. But it was run by children who were former inmates, I suppose, but no, residents. Some of them survived by producing art, and an amazing art too. They have a whole history of artworks in both painting, which was introduced by the French, but before that, pastel painting was introduced by the French, but before that, they had amazing inlay artwork with lacquer, which they would, paint vases and lacquer them with black, and black was more common. Clear lacquer is a modern invention. I don't think a lot of people know that. That's why a lot of Greek vases are black, and why a lot of this Greek artwork blackens over the years, because it's not actually black and it leaches through. It is it's the juices of crushed beetles, and that's why a lot of Greek artwork is black, because the beetle juice leached through and changed all the. Now for white, they used alabaster, and alabaster and beetle juice actually produces that bronze look. And I'm going off tangent here. Ukraine is a shit show. Okay? And I want to impress upon you what a shit show humanity is, and how there are things that we deliberately oppress and suppress in the name of politics. And of course, that thing we suppress is called the truth. And that I bet you right now, you can get over a dozen videos showing airstrikes, takeoffs and landings. You can find the USS Lincoln. It's not in the Gulf anymore. It is. I think it's. Now I'm going to look. Where's it headed? Indian Ocean somewhere. I know. It's headed for somewhere, that island in the Indian Ocean. It's resupplying. It's on a resupply outside of the conflict zone. It's also going to be rotating sailors, aircraft, a whole bunch of, because it basically has pounded the living daylights. It used its entire ordnance on Iran, and then basically, other than its necessary, shoulder-launched missiles and bullets. But other than maybe the footage, I think there's only one footage out there of the laser, and it's static. It's not very good. It's a firing at night. I don't. You can find almost anything out of the 132 points of 148 today. Yesterday was 132. Out of 148 points of contact, right? Not one legitimate footage. You can find GoPros in now here's the problem. I did previously use some of these footage. They come from Reddit groups. Now the guy who was posting a lot of the war footage has disappeared. He was it's probably died in an airstrike. That is unfortunate. One of the it happens, but as a YouTuber, I'd never ever recommend anybody go to Ukraine or Russia to get war footage, because you'll go from covering the war to being a casualty of the war. Just, you look up war correspondents. There weren't many who survived the Vietnam War, or I think many survived the Korean War. Most of the US war correspondents were embedded in the US Army. How many of them out of 10,000 survived the war? Casualties. The worst thing you can be is a cameraman on the front. Now, I know some people do it, and I know some people love it. And I know that some war correspondents know to keep their distance. Like the Iranian war correspondent who's sitting on the Azerbaijani side of the conflict. He has his head screwed on. You get the footage from whomever and you don't stick around. You don't do a CNN and stand live in front of the girls' school, because the next building might just go whoosh over you. So, yeah, and you imagine, I really do feel sorry that someone's channel just suddenly stopped. I can only speculate when someone said, oh, yeah, he's dead. So, yeah, you can only speculate. I cannot confirm or deny where or when he died. It's just months ago his channel stopped. He stopped posting to Reddit war footage. It's literally still, I suppose you'd call it a channel, but because he uploaded through Odyssey. But yeah, he showed people the drone war, both sides, most of the time though Russian. Drone footage is rare, and it's getting rarer. Now, a lot of footage I've seen recently is rehashed and reused. And then we'll go around the front. I think I've taken enough of your time. I think you now have a clear picture that this is a low-intensity war, although even as the Russians say and have said the Ukrainians are brave, they also say they're stupid. Right? They outnumber us, but they never come at us. I wish I could talk to these people and ask them, well, what do you mean? Because most of the time it appears Ukraine cannot gather for any offensive. They cannot organize themselves. They cannot get out of the trenches. A lot of people say Ukraine has to push its soldiers into the front. So, and I thought the best action Russia could have taken was to do nothing, just let Ukraine burn out. But Russia seems to have objectives they still want to meet. Otherwise, now, according to Putin, this is primarily establishing a buffer. And he's brought up this buffer zone in the last 3 speeches he has made, and all of them continually say that the mission is almost complete. I know he's he acknowledges that there are those who want the war to end, and it really comes up, right? He has had people arrested. People are not asking much about the final goal, or obviously every question is crafted through lawyers and checked through Mr. Putin's office. And I know that annoys a lot of people because there are questions I would love answered too. But I think he's also ended the national security, meaning that you'll know when it's over, and then you'll start to get more answers. So I don't like that. I'd rather now as well. I would rather be able to tell you, yeah, they stopped at this town. No, I can't. Do they want this town or not? There seems to be no understanding why field commanders... Now, we do know they struck recently some missile launchers down here, but is it possible? And I know also they... why aren't they striking down here? Or any other? How much of... Now, I know it's a strange answer to the question, but Putin did actually answer one question once. Because we don't want Ukraine. Okay, I get that. But then he said, we want to leave Ukraine not hating us. And it's like, you do know they hate you now. But maybe there's a Russian word he used that's a different form of hate. Now, if you know, let me know. But I don't know. I've tried to get, but Russians won't explain it. So it's just something they laugh at. So, yeah, I don't think they really consider Ukraine hating them. I think it's saying like, oh, the bully, he beat me up. He only dislikes me. And it's like, okay. But Ukraine, and trust me, not all bullies are big block-headed fellas. There's a lot of skinny martial arts guys who just could take an absolute beating. So they love to beat people up. They don't care if they win or lose a fight. And they're the worst. Right? The ones who can take a lot of pain. And that... Okay, so we have fighting on the buffer. No expansion of the buffer. Now, remember the Ukrainian offensive? Well, that disappeared months ago. And it looks like... Russia hasn't stepped in either. So, there's probably Ukrainians all through here. And the Russians are just staring at them and they're staring at each other. Now, someone did say that the points of contact... Whoops. Right. The points of contact are broad and generalized. That's a fair point. So we've got to take it with a grain of salt that in this area... Now, that's why I said... You can find out more about Iran than you can Ukraine. You don't know how long they've been fighting, but apparently, if the marker stays up for days, it means they're still fighting. It's not that they forgot to take it down, it's still that they're getting battle reports. Now, according to some forums, the people who run this site only get the same information they give us, and it all comes from the Ukrainian Ministry of Truth. So I am telling you to take it with a grain of salt that there is an ongoing battle in this area. Same here. Now these are sporadic and have stopped. This is an ongoing offensive and fighting has intensified. That's why there's 2. Now the Russians have again surrounded this base and attacked it. Now, there is talk that a lot of these Ukrainian bases are joined to an underground network. I've only seen galleries from the fall of Bakhmut, and apparently that is why the Russians was what's his name? Wasn't Putin, but the Russian general. It was was relieved of duty by Putin because he released too much information. Right, these galleries were built back in the 50s and 60s. These were one of thousands where Russia stockpiled guns and munitions, expecting, with the Berlin Wall and the airlift, they expected Europe to invade Russia. They expected World War III. They literally had what they thought was the timetable to war, and because it mentioned World War I and World War II and was published in well before either of those broke out, it actually mentioned a series of 3 wars, and the third would culminate in the destruction of Russia, and that would be that Russia would be the last nation state on Earth, right? Because it was the largest and hardest nut to crack, because the Russians could retreat and still there's a lot of national unity there. Unlike Europe, most Europeans consider themselves Europeans, not Dutch, not whatever. They consider their national identity or racial identity as a social construct, right? That is, it's just an idea. Yeah, it's just an idea. You're white. Yeah, sure. And you're in your homeland, and you're conquered because you don't want to defend an idea. Yeah, that idea just happens to be you and your freedom and your existence. But no, you want to hand the world to savages because it will not make it a better place. Their history, again, the Middle East is another one. Most of your Middle East wars aren't taught in school, but they don't record most of them either. So we have an ongoing offensive at Lyman. We have an ongoing offensive right now also towards, hate when it sticks, I would say, Ruvizkia. And of course they're closing the gap. Now they've made a small gains past Silvesk, but it is slow, and it's often months of nothing on this front. Now and again, they'll open up against Ukrainians, and Ukrainian positions to just remind them that if they gather in large numbers, they get crushed like a bug. But otherwise, the Russians leave them alone. Now the Ukrainians are pushing into Chavez Yar. There's an offensive by the Ukrainians, and the Russians are now fighting back against them. Now, why isn't the marker blue? Well, it's the debt offensive, okay? They don't, like, Ukraine, there are Ukrainian videos, Ukraine has taken back territory. Yeah, the Russians have crushed them and now pushing back. So, yeah, that's what's going on there. Here, again, ongoing offensives which have stalled. The Russians can't break through the lines. And it's cannon fodder. And for the Russian commanders, it's advantageous to not advance. Same here. It's advantageous not to advance until the Ukrainians retreat. And same here. Now, allegedly, after they captured this base, the Ukrainians set up roadblocks, and so were attacking them from here, but so far, nothing. The Ukrainians have abandoned their positions. The Russians have been able to advance slowly up to Brest-Litovsk, but now they are again settling in, and that's what they do. They revert to trench warfare very quickly. There's fighting here, but there's fighting all over. There's drone strikes and artillery strikes. So you can be miles from the front. Doesn't mean you're immune. So if you're within 5 miles of the front, you're in easy artillery range, and some artillery much further, but not much. Rocket artillery, is primarily, and again, one of the reasons why Russia is advancing slow is air defences. Now, Russia's made some small gains in the DPR, but that's about it. Nothing significant has fallen. They are trying to get into an advantageous position around Hayoni. Is it? Forgive my enunciations. They are trying to still secure their positions here. The Ukrainians are not relenting. They have not fallen back in months. They were originally falling back too up here, but Ukraine is pushing now on the front in some areas. Now, they've come under criticism for human wave tactics, saying that, but it's not the tens of thousands that the Soviet Union used to overwhelm the Germans. Right? They are sending several waves of men, mostly recruits, and after a few heavy exchanges of automated fire, the Ukrainians are forced to retreat. But they're doing it every day. Now, you think that would just devastate their army. But of course, we don't know the true casualties. Over 1,000 a day. So my guess is the Russians just sit there after the Ukrainians lose a few hundred 50 or 60 at each encounter. They retreat. They're not risking. They risk 1,000 men. The Russians aren't killing 1,000 men in every encounter. Most of these artillery strikes kill hardly anybody. As soon as people hear artillery, they're in their foxholes. If they're in a tank, they're nowhere near it within minutes. Or they're backing up as fast as they can. The worst thing is their little hearing stations where they listen for drones. Now, if I was... Well, I don't know why Russia and Ukraine, and my guess is they both want to use drones, just don't blanket the country with jamming. Now, there are areas where there is a lot of jamming and drones find it difficult to operate, but what Russia does is fly over these areas and drop on them with autonomous guided munitions. Now, autonomous guided munitions use a combination of visual identification technologies and inertial guidance to hit their target. But of course, the problem is you need to be close when you launch them and have and Russian accuracy and Ukrainian accuracy aren't that much different from each other. Remember, both sides are using similar technologies. They're all using hand-me-down Western technologies, whether Russia wants to admit it or not. A lot of Russia's top technology is not used in this war, or sparingly. A lot of it is only new and in small numbers. Now, they did withdraw some of their drone technology and now bringing it back with improvements. But neither side could... Whenever Russia gets a huge tactical advantage, it doesn't take long before the rest of the world figures it out. But here's the part that's really annoying Europe right now. Russia, whatever Europe does, Russia can match them. They have studied each other so much since the 1920s, trying to work Don't forget, for centuries, they've all been working out how to try to conquer each other. It ain't working. And really, as put to me today and yesterday and the day before, I get it. I know. I still bring it up. Yeah, maybe you think I should just say it. Yes, I think this war is culling the herd. I think Zelensky wants to cull Ukraine, and I brought it up years ago that he wants to turn Ukraine into New Jerusalem. This is a project of the Zionists. Not all of them are Jews, but the vast majority of Zionists are Jews, and the evangelicals, to turn Ukraine from Russian Orthodox to Ukrainian Orthodox, then into New Orthodox. New Orthodox is not derived from Greek Orthodox. It is anti-Catholic. It is Anabaptism disguised as orthodoxy, right? They want to re-establish a single religion, single Abrahamic religion to rule the world, and Ukraine was to be New Jerusalem. And you can call me a conspiracy theorist or not, but look around you. How much satanic imagery, and don't point to my writing because you don't know it and it's incomplete. I am not glorifying. I am using the supernatural as a literary device in an ongoing story, whereas there are literal, admitted Satanists like Bad Bunny, like Diddy, and there are those cultural Marxists / Islamists like Hassan Piker, Mandami, who openly call for blood in the streets without arrest. They could shock their dog. They could literally backhand their employees. Mandami's wife has repeatedly abused servants. There is a long list of allegations against many in Somali, the Somali community, who are alleged war criminals with false identities handed to them by the UN for relocation. War criminals. Literal wanted war criminals. The United States has a long history of asylum to war criminals and hiding their identities because they provide ongoing intelligence in their communities and back home. But don't think the United States is the only one. France, Britain, Germany, Russia, they all do it. There is no morality. Why declare someone a war criminal? Because if they walk away, they could just go, oh, look, we found Adolf Hitler. And no, Adolf Hitler was not in captivity in Germany. His body double was, but he still was in captivity in Russia. And he died in captivity. His body was eventually returned to Germany for confirmation that he was not the real thing. But what you're asking about DNA? Well, yes, they had Hitler's blood type on record for a start. And they had accurate measurements of him from his suit. Hugo Boss fitted him with a suit, remember? So they had accurate measurements. They had all sorts of other ways of verifying people, including fingerprints, which Germany had on file. There was also allegedly a birthmark that was missing because it was secret. Hitler had a scar from minor surgery. So there were things that definitely were kept secret for a reason. And yeah, we don't know. And it's not our place to know, right? I read John Toland's version. I know people dismiss him as a Zionist Jew because he doesn't give you the information you want. Now, you've got to stop considering the source and consider the information. Because every history book still has to have some grain of truth to it. And you can compare them to each other. And you get this idea that Alos got it in his head that Napoleon's and the Kaiser's failure was quitting at midnight, right, on the verge of victory. Maybe Napoleon was on the verge of victory, and maybe he should have only retreated to Crimea and opened up the ports. But my guess is the English were threatening his ports. He had to get the bulk of his army home as fast as possible, and he didn't expect winter to be as harsh as it was. And I think ultimately also the Austrians and many others were plotting against him and were secretly allowing the Tatars to roam the countryside unmolested to attack his supply lines. And I bet you a few Hungarians were also setting fire to them or just taking the wagons home. Oh, the Tatars stole them, I swear. So you'll never get an entirely true picture. But again, one of the reasons why Russia was more successful than the Germans in World War II was Russia got many to convert to their side, right? And again, as Russia liberates the Donbass, where's the resistance? Where's the millions that we could arm against them? Ukraine tried. Ukraine flooded in Bakhmut and arms in the Donbass. When Russia rolled into the Donbass city, there was literally trucks of guns and ammunition. Civilians pointed to them and told the Russians, I would have shown the world. Ukraine has asked and it cannot get millions to fight for it. Most Ukrainians won't fight for them. So there's very little on the front, a lot of activity, very little. Zelensky, of course, is livid because Trump had a phone call. The transcript will be most likely on the White House site eventually. But here's the excerpt that was released. Trump and Putin spoke today about the Middle East. Putin said he wanted to be helpful. This is Mar-a-Lago, Florida, where Putin offered to be helpful to get a settlement in Iran. And Trump immediately responded, you could be more helpful by getting Ukraine-Russia war over with. That would be more helpful. Otherwise, they had a good talk. Now, what is the good talk? The talk is about nuclear arms reduction. Forget Ukraine, okay? Ukraine is a distraction from the ongoing wider talks about nuclear proliferation. Since World War II, not just Britain, not just France, South Africa has finally confirmed that it had a nuclear bomb and nuclear technology. When asked what happened to it, mostly shrugs and secrets. Nobody knows which country, but some believe the Netherlands, and these are South African. The South Africans went to the Netherlands, Canada, and others. Now, some say 27, some say more than that have nuclear weapons. Some only have a handful, like Pakistan and India. But some of the countries who are alleged to have nuclear weapons deny it. And, of course, right now, Russia does have nuclear weapons. Allegedly to have nuclear weapons in Belarus. Now, technically, they should be handing Kronstadt back to the Germans. Remember, this was Germany. It broke up. It was somewhat invaded over the last 1,000 years by other ethnic groups. As well as that, they mix with the locals, so you can't exactly kick them out either. So it gets more and more complicated with each generation, to the point where it's Germany just shrugs. They don't know what to do. They're Europe's whipping boy. Every time Germany wants to do something, they get told, no. Remember that time when you invaded Poland? See, Germany and Poland had a long-running dispute. America and Britain and all these other countries should not have got involved, other than containment of the war. But no, there is lots of problems in the world stemming from the fact that people lied about the root causes of World War II, about the politics of World War II. But two things can be true. You can have good ideas, you can have good intentions, and you can fight the deep state and the criminal enterprise. But if your methods are just as bad as them, you're not the good guy either. You're not the alternative. But some of the policies should never have been gotten rid of, such as anti-communism. We should have kept anti-communism and applied it to... We should have applied anti-communist laws to the rest of socialists. Any political party that wants to be the only party, Democrats, should be banned. You should be banned from office if you meet the criteria of a communist. Just because you don't call yourself one. Oh no, I'm not a communist, I'm a socialist. Shut up, Bernie, you're a commie. You should be banned. Now then people say, oh, that'll get Putin. Maybe it would, maybe it won't. I forget the exact criteria. I don't particularly care. I think the anti-communist laws should have been applied, and that's that. America should have never given up Europe. That was a huge, huge mistake. There should have been a slow withdrawal after the Soviet... and waited. Shouldn't have withdrawn until the Soviet Union collapsed, and then be a slow withdrawal. But as many people keep reminding me, it's not a mistake. It was not an unintended. It was intended all along. Now, I do think millionaires and billionaires did not intend for the economic instability they're dealing with right now. Otherwise, there probably would be a World War III. Right? Things are too expensive. They cannot guarantee their own safety. So no, they're not going to war. They are actually trying to keep pressure on Russia without going to war with Russia. They are trying to manufacture a consent. Don't trust me. They are trying, but they fucked up. Some area, they really have. They're losing control of their own narratives. They're desperately trying to use the media matrix to desperately stop the flow of information and control it, to make sure that you only listen to influencers, because they're afraid, right? They're afraid that kids are going to turn off Mr. Beast with his stupid artificial Joker smile. You look at him smile. Once you know it's artificial, once you dive into all the allegations against Mr. Beast, you will wonder why he's not in prison. Because he's one of them, and he's always been one of them. He is a product of the media hype train. But people are learning what a scumbag he and Logan Paul and many others are, and that is panicking the establishment. So there are unintended consequences. They never intended to lose control of Putin. He was supposed to step down. Medvedev was supposed to take over and have a war with Europe. You believe me or not, Putin has prevented war with Europe. Now, despite their global glut of oil, there is $800 a barrel. It should be $50, but there's a global glut. Venezuela, however, cheap oil that flowed to China. China buys most of the world's oil, right? China is a glutton for oil. Their industries are inefficient. Their cars do not get great gas mileage. There are a whole range of issues with production and productivity in China. American refineries are far more efficient. They have better temperature and pressure control. They can produce oil faster. They can soft filter most crude, including Venezuelan. Most oil is dirty, by the way. Dirty oil has solid particulates in it, mostly carbon. Remember, oil primordially is primordial ooze. It is a collection of plant breakdown. Okay? Particularly plankton. The vast majority of oil is plankton breakdown. Where Venezuela, such a green, wonderful jungle, it produces massive amounts of oil every year. So much that it bubbles to the surface. And that's why it's so dirty. A lot of it literally is pumped out of a lake of oil full of everything, including plants that have not completely broken down in this primordial ooze. You can look it up, Venezuelan oil lake. It's dirty, smelly. They lose millions of barrels of oil every year to thieves, which is why Venezuela is broke, not American sanctions. What about Cuba? Cuba's broke because it has no resources. If China was so successful as a communist country, they could subsidize Cuba. Russia, remember, Cuba was subsidized by Russia. Before that, it was subsidized by America. Before that, it was a slave outpost of Spain. Before that, it was a literal jungle with natives. Cuba's never had an economy of its own. It has virtually no resources of its own. Sugar, bananas, none of which could sustain its overpopulation. Sooner or later, population control will come in, right? It will be force. But for the next 20 or 30 years, it's going to be coercion, right? The government's not in a position of power or strength to coerce with violence a population still capable of fighting back. Eventually, what will happen is they will allow a huge civilizational collapse. The green zones will be military bases and start building walls. When you start seeing walls around New York City, you know it's coming. There'll be large port cities that will be walled off or checkpointed. That's how communists take over. They take control of your ports. Okay? That's how they took over Russia. Russia didn't fall to communism. They took over the ports and ruled ruthlessly. People who lived out in the wilderness were hunted down ruthlessly and executed. Right? Anybody who didn't surrender to the communists were cut off. You couldn't cross Russia to get. Most people tried to flee to Europe. Right? European armies abandoned them. They invaded Russia on the promise of liberation, and then got bogged down in Crimea, and then started arguing with each other because America wouldn't get involved. Should have made peace with Germany, I guess. So Russia is in a good position to make up for the right. Remember, we had an oil glut until the sanctions on Russia. US is talking about a deal with Europe to lift the sanctions, and Putin is talking about what he can get in Ukraine. This is how the Ukraine war may end. Why? Because Iran was selling to Europe and China, not US. Most Iranian oil did not go. Most Iranian oil went to China, followed by Europe. Now, Europe, despite its woes, is a major arms importer. It's also an arms exporter, but it's not the largest. But yes, they do import and trade a lot of arms with each other. They have started to stockpile not just Patriots air defenses, but their own air defense systems. You have Arrow in Germany and others who have started producing again. Arrow's the replacers for the Iris. I asked the other day what happened to the Iris T. It has been replaced. British Hawk, I think it is been upgraded. I think it was called the Bull Pup. Sorry, not Bull Pup, that's the rifle. Bulldog, programmable missile. I don't know what's happened with that. It looks like it's actually an airborne programmable missile, so it's different from the... anyway, Britain's replacing its air defences, so is Germany, so is France. They're all working with each other. Often they share technologies and then independently produce their own versions. However, imports have more than tripled from between 2021 and 2025. Some of their exports, but nearly half of their weapons were from the United States. Then you got Israel and India and some African countries, including South Africa, major arms exporters. In fact, that's the only thing. Arms exports is the only thing keeping South Africa afloat right now. Mostly ammunition. Same with Brazil, handguns and ammunition. China and Russia, Europe market is growing. China and Russia, Russian market's crumbling because they cannot export anything other than a handful of stuff to India. Literally their own defense industry has been co-opted by China. They're literally now solely providing engine parts to China. Massive orders, right, in the tens of millions. But why China is burning through so much engine parts is they're desperate training pilots. And it's believed they're losing aircraft every year in training accidents. You think you're training hundreds of pilots. You think how few aircraft there are flying. That's why there's so few air crashes. But if you're training hundreds of pilots and you're trying to rush, you get the same situation with Ukraine, where rushed pilots crash. How many crashes Ukraine had compared to? But yes, so US will dominate Europe for the next 10 years, particularly with the F-35. It is now in high demand, and there are variants, each tailored for Air Force, Marines, and carrier fleets. But its cost, comparative cost to other aircraft, which is why France right now and Poland is Poland is now building the world's largest army, not just they are building the world's largest European army, but they're also trying to build the world's largest army. That is to become the center of the Euro army. Now, Patriots, and they're for big missiles, right? But interceptors and other technologies. Now, Zelensky the other day said, we produce millions of drones. No, you don't. You produce tens of thousands of drones. And mostly in India. Right? Tracked down Zelensky. Okay, US CENTCOM released recently footage of the Lucas drone. Okay, in combat. Okay, it's to combat the Shahed drone, which India has allegedly gotten hold of from its friendship with, or not so much friendship, regional cooperation with Iran. Some Iranians are holidaying in India right now. And America has copied an Iranian drone and turned it into the Lucas. Now, India has produced the Bahraini, I believe it's called. Now, the Shahed 136 is loitering. You just don't launch it. It actually can stick around and wait for a target. Oh, no. It's actually Sheesh, nag. Okay. It's not the Barani. The Barani missile must be different. It must be something different. I know India has produced a number of amazing technologies recently, which all appear to be almost exact identical copies of everybody else's technology. Oh, India, you're so Chinese, and China, you're so Russian when it comes to research. So this claims they're coming the new Timu, right? It's always the biggest. America says, 500. India says, 1,000. You can't get... It has a bigger warhead. Same size as the Shahed. No way it's longer. No way it's faster. No way it carries more. That's one warfare. You just heard a buzzword. Iran did invent a cheap drone. Copied, right? Iran with Russia copied and produced, right? Everybody's nicking from each other. Everybody. Now, one of the biggest threats to helicopters right now is drones. There's a drone in the blades, you're a goner. You don't need to shoot. Armored helicopters are a thing in the past because the armor doesn't protect them, right? You don't need to ground fire. You might get lucky, but no, you just need to swarm fire a helicopter and rip its blades off. Helicopters are too vulnerable to be armored now. They need to be light maneuverable and standoff. Everything's becoming a standoff weapon, whether it's an aircraft carrier, a tank, artillery. Drones have turned everything into a standoff technology. Even soldiers. You can't send soldiers in first. Send drones in first. And that's what Russia's done. Well, not just drones, but this is a new missile launcher. These are 122s off the back of compact launchers off the back of a truck. They rock up, fire, right? They don't need to fire many of them. Russia has overrun the settlement of Golubovka, Golubovka in DPR within a few days. And yeah, so even Russia's admitting it doesn't happen overnight, even if they overwhelm the Ukrainians. Now, he's not firing the weapon. He's using this. I don't know what he's doing. Why is T-posing? But he's posing for a picture and decided to put his rifle on display. Look, Ma, I got a big... Look at Ma. No. He's proud of his rifle. He polishes it every day, you know. Now and again, he even gets to discharge it. All right, so Putin and Trump had a phone call. The Kremlin has put out we did it. We finally got the phone call we wanted, and, didn't get everything we wanted. Nothing. Business-like, open, constructive. Means both sides didn't get what they want, and neither side would give in enough. I know what Russia wants. It wants to export oil. It keeps... I wonder what Russia wants. Well, it's like they keep telling us. So, Russia wants something. Ukraine wants something. Ukraine ain't going to get what it wants. Putin ain't going to get what he wants. Eventually, Russia has to, halt. But Russia's pissed. They lost their friend. They're losing Iran. Okay? They can't stop the war in Iran. The Middle East, gas and oil. So, leading up to Iran's timetable, if you haven't noticed, ends in June. What else is supposed to end in June? Wow, you think the Iran war is actually not Israel, but America and Israel putting strategic pressure on Russia, because Israel had came up with a plan, and doesn't mean that Israel is wagging the dog right now, but it's actually part of Donald Trump's global initiative to strategically isolate China to prevent World War III and stop Russia from going along and turning Ukraine into a European battlefield, which would destroy both Russia and Europe. While it could strategically benefit the United States in the short term, in the long term, you have to deal with the fact that China is going to invade a lot of countries, and it'll be a new Cold War, lots of people dead, and the American economy will take decades to recover. Trump doesn't want that. Does not want to be going down in history as the president who watched World War II happen. Why? Who remembers the president before Roosevelt? Anybody? Exactly. No one wants to be the last Republican president for the next decade. Well, 3 presidencies, almost 3 presidencies. Roosevelt was a lot longer, but yes. You really want that to happen? Wish Republicans would wake up sometimes. All right, so the war against Iran. In the war against Iran, Iran's assembly of experts have chosen one of Khomeini's remaining sons. I believe there's 2. The older one is a member of the Islamic Guard. He recently carried out executions, so he is considered perfect for the revolution to continue. And the revolution must go on. The revolution demands sacrifice. And, of course, if Iran can't sacrifice protesters, they will punish and destroy the Middle Eastern economy. Now, the Middle Eastern economy under MBS was headed towards peace and prosperity because they realized Islam is collapsing. The Islamic dilemma is spreading. And, well, Russia would love a Christian South in Iran. They've never done anything other than pander to Muslims for the last 40 years, even Putin. Why? Because they're afraid that if they crusade or missionary in Iran, that the Gulf states would find a way to get, particularly Israel, to get a war with Russia. There are strategic implications everywhere. Everyone's poised to do something good, but nobody can because the psychopaths don't want good. They want more profits. And so Trump is taking a gamble to have a strategic conflict, just like Russia has a strategic conflict, and then say, yours is a war. And then Russia says, no, you have a war. And you say, well, we have a conflict. And Russia says, we have a conflict. So you have détente, gentlemen. And once again, the Cold War merry-go-round. So Russia tries to put strategic political pressure on the United States. And the United States puts a missile up one of Khomeini's nostrils. But this was the Iranian Revolutionary Guard headquarters. There's a building missing. Now, someone brought up 9/11 and other things. I didn't get to it. My stream today died. This time not at 2 hours, at half an hour. I've had 3 streams die now. It's ridiculous. So I may go back to having to record all my streams and can't live stream. Because when I try, I keep getting nuclear weaponed and then never get an answer why my streams died or how I can fix it. Just, we're working on it. Oh, what a wonderful world we live in, where everybody else can do something but me, because somehow I'm a threat to the system. So, shall I continue being a threat to the system? Absolutely, gentlemen. Absolutely. The noticing will continue until morale improves. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please support the channel. One of these days, I'll get more... I'll get a Ko-Fi donation, and I'll probably have an actual physical heart attack. Patreon. Join my Patreon community. You don't have to, but it's really nice if you gave me $1 a month. What's wrong with that? Why is it so hard? I don't know. I guess I'm not worth anything. I don't make that much from advertising revenue. I don't know where people get misled that YouTubers make lots of money from advertising revenue. No, you make it from sponsorships. Do you see the military-industrial complex sponsoring me or the communists? It's like, wow. You see the big corporations sponsoring me for an ATT event? You see them, or Mr. Glenn Finnick, who gets sponsored by Glenn Finnick for his Scottish Highland hiking videos, which only 1,000 people watch. But there you go. It's not who you know. Sorry, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I don't know anybody. I'm not anybody's son. I'm not anybody's Freemason-connected media matrix informant. I am not controlled. So I am one of the, and we don't know how many millions of people, and I may soon join the ranks of the millions who are denied a YouTube channel. Did you know what happens when you deny a YouTube channel? You can't sign in and watch YouTube either. Did you know that? You know how many YouTube accounts now how many people now have multiple YouTube accounts? I think soon YouTube bubble will burst, and that is when Rumble and others will grow, and we'll see, maybe then I'll earn some ad revenue. But yes, as more people come to Rumble, I appreciate you. I see a slight uptake in the audience, so I know people are leaving YouTube. I get it. I do. YouTube was shutting down so many channels. It's pathetic. And so many people don't get recommended my videos. I do not get recommended on Facebook. I'm shadow banned everywhere I go. So the fact I have any audience is amazing. So the media information matrix isn't working on you. So congratulations, you're not manipulated. See you in the next video. Bye for now.